So in this video I'll be showing you how to use your Casio FX991EX Calculator and the Casio FX CG50 graphic calculator to work with binomial probability distribution questions. Now, two of the most commonly used and more popular calculators used for AS Maths and A-level Maths and also for further Maths is the Casio FX991EX Calculator or the Casio FX CG50 model. Now, the main difference between the two is one is more scientific and retails around about the £20 mark or £25 mark, and the graphic calculator, which is the CG50 model, which retails around about £80 plus. Now, back in the days before the introduction of the new sort of syllabus of A-level Maths and AS Maths, going from sort of modular to linear courses, is that you used to be given a formula book which contained all the types of formulas you would most commonly use and also lots of statistical tables. Now, they have completely scrapped that and imported all the tables, etc., for the statistics mode into each of these two calculators. So rather than being able to read information from a table, all they've done now is transferred that for you being able to use your calculator effectively. Now, most examiners, exam boards and teachers would probably recommend you buying one of these two models. Obviously there are other calculators available, however Casio seemed to monopolise the whole market and introduced this, and working closely with the exam boards to talk with them and have the features that require you to do the things that they're asking you to do in the exams. So I would strongly recommend that you own one of these two calculators, and if you were to purchase now, how essential is the graphic calculator? Well, at normal A-level maths, I would say the FX991EX will be absolutely fine. Obviously, if you're wanting help with more graphs, which the graphic calculator will be able to do because it'll be able to plot the graphs, etc., or you're working with further maths, then obviously you're then encouraged to use the FX CG50 just to make your life a little bit easier when it comes to more complex questions. Now, personally, if you have got a graphic calculator, I would strongly recommend you taking a scientific calculator. Doesn't necessarily need to be the FX991EX calculator, just the one that you may have used at GCSE will be absolutely fine. And the main reason for that is because there are certain features on the graphic calculator that can be really fiddly to access. So for example, the NCR function is like a mode that you then need to type in, whereas on a scientific calculator it's just a shift function. So there's no rule set in stone on how many calculators you can take. Obviously you don't want to be like a Del Boy and have like 50 calculators walking into an exam, but taking two calculators I think is sensible. One that just easy to type in, you're not faffing about with going through menus, etc., and it's quick and easy, and one that you're probably more comfortable working with simple calculations rather than taking the graphic. But like I said, it's entirely up to you which calculator you use, and the purpose of this video is to show you how we can use binomial probability with both of these two calculators. Now, the main feature of the binomial probability mode or distribution mode in your calculator is one of two things. Your calculator can allow you to get a exact value of a probability, so when you're working out probability of x equals x, so in other words it's pre-programmed not only with the NCR function but the whole entire formula to work out the probabilities of exact values. And it can also give you a list of probabilities, both for exact values but also cumulative probabilities as well. So if you're wanting to work out probability of where x equals a certain value, your calculator will give you that instantly, and if you're wanting values of where x is less or equal to a particular value, your calculator will help you to do that as well. Now, the key thing with this is that there are several ways of answering probability questions. Some can be answered directly and some can be answered by manipulating the question in a way that is both quicker and easier to get to the answer of probability required. Now, I have made a video on how you can manipulate questions and reading questions into kind of directing you to using one of these two features on your calculator. So either manipulating a question for exact values, and I don't want to do that, so let's just get rid of that. I want to highlight for either working exact values or manipulating questions involving inequalities so that it just involves less or equal to values where you can simply read off questions on your calculator. Now, on your calculator there are two binomial distribution modes for you to select, and it's important you understand what both of those two things mean. Now, how it's written on your calculator might be slightly different to what you can see on the screen, but it generally means the same. So on one calculator, if you look at binomial PD, that looks at exact value probability. So if you've got a question, or in a part of a question you are wanting to work out the probability that x equals a certain value of x, then B binomial PD is the one for you to look for. If you're wanting, let's say, binomial CD, which basically looks like inclusive cumulative probabilities. So for this mode of BCD, this allows you to work with questions or parts of questions where you're wanting to work out less or equal to values. And again, it's two important steps that you need to be aware of. And yes, you can work out the other. So for example, if you're wanting a sum of probabilities, then yes, you can work out BPD and work out the individual probabilities. If you're wanting let's say exact value, then you can use binomial CD, but it just involves that little bit of manipulation, and sometimes you're making questions a lot more difficult. So it's really important you know when and where to use each of those two modes, which hopefully you'll gain more of an understanding by continuing to watch this video. Now before we continue, this is really important. So much so I've written it in capitals. So the important note is that although using a calculator is super quick and easy, it is vital that you show full working out to show methodology and numbers building up to your final answer, as this will maximize your marks in terms of method marks, but also means that if you press something incorrectly or misread something halfway through, you still might get some marks, like follow through marks in terms of method. So if a question is worth 2 or plus marks, then they will still be expecting you to do at least 2 or more things to merit those marks. So it is highly unlikely you'll get full marks simply by copying a number off your calculator. So make sure that you're still showing you're working out, even though you're working out the components of your answer on your calculator, but make sure you are writing down what you're typing in, what you're finding out in on your exam paper to get maximum marks. So if we start by focusing on the FX991EX calculator, now the two calculators are very similar, with them both being manufactured by Casio, but there are little tweaks on how to access certain things which I'll go through in this video. So on the FX991EX calculator, what we need to do is first press menu, and then you need to select option 7, which is the distribution, which looks like a bit of a normal distribution curve, and we select that. And you'll have all the types of statistical distributions you can have. Now, depending on what level, of course, or what exam board you're doing, you might look at different distributions. So for the AQA, normal distribution tends to come in year 13, but also you can get pass on there as well. So on the first screen, you've got the option of binomial PD, which is option 4, and if you scroll down, you'll then have access to binomial CD. Now, I've mentioned this previously in the video, that binomial PD is when you're working out when you're wanting values of particular values of x. So when you're wanting probability of p equals a certain value, and BCD is for cumulative values. So that's when you're working with probabilities where you are wanting a probability of a certain value or less than that particular value, inclusive of that number, which is really important. Now, regardless of which method you then choose, you'll get an option of either having a list or a variable. Now, again, there is no wrong answer in this. It's just a case of what you feel more comfortable in and what practice you do. And I definitely recommend practice, in which that's the purpose of this video, is for you to gain an understanding about what information is shown in both these two modes. Now, there are pros and cons on both the two modes. Now, the list is basically going to give you a list of values of probabilities, whether it be exact values or cumulative. It's entirely up to you. Now, the list is basically the old formula book tables that used to be in the olden days. I'll say olden days because it makes me feel old, when we are given a formula book where all the binomial probabilities are already pre-programmed into your calculator, whereas before they were in a book and in a table. So the advantage of this, of using a list mode, is that it's really good for big mark questions and for showing working out. However, it's not great when n is large, and you're also going to have lots of numbers on your screen, which therefore means it can be very easy for you to misread numbers. And also, accuracy of probabilities are usually only given to 4 decimal places. So if you're wanting an answer that's bigger, unfortunately, calculator might not show it. And particularly if your answer probability is really small, whereas before, when you're using the formula, it gave you your answer in standard form, like say to the -5, then it's going to be really difficult for you to read off that on your screen. Now, the variable mode only gives you one probability, so this only gives you the probability of what you're actually looking for, whether it be cumulative or exact. Now, the sort of positives for working in variable mode is that it's good for small mark questions, there's less numbers on your screen, and it's more accuracy in your answers. So the answer will be giving your answer in standard form if it's really small, or give it to, let's say, to 6 or 7 decimal places. And it's also really good when n is large. Now the disadvantage of variable mode is that it needs to be repeated to show you're working out calculations, which again I'll go through. And obviously the disadvantage of using a list mode is that it's not great when n is large, lots of numbers on your screen, very easy for you to misread. And like I said, we won't focus on this too much at this initial yet, because you probably lost track and probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but hopefully this will all make sense when we go through an actual question where we're using our calculator to work it out. So let's have a look at a particular question. So in this particular question, we've got the parameter of that x is binomially distributed with n being 10 and the probability of success being 0.4. Now, as I said, I've purposely picked a small number of n simply because it's easy for us to work out and we're not dealing with huge numbers that we're working through. So for this, I could easily use the formula to work this out, for particularly with a, because it's an exact value. So I could use n, let's get a pen that actually I can write with rather than a marker. So for a, I will typically do, without using my calculator, or with using my calculator obviously, I'd do 10^3 times 0.4 to the power of 3 times 0.6 to the power of 7. Press equals and I'd get the answer. Now to use your calculator in binomial mode, now for this I'm wanting exact value, so I'm going to select option 4. I'm going to just want the answer for this one, so I'm going to click variable and I'm going to enter the values in. So here on my calculator in B, I'm going to call it BP mode, is going to be x equals 3, n equals 10, and p equals 0.04 rather. So here if I just enter this in, I've got x equals 3 equals, I've got n equals 10, and I've got probability of 0.4 as a success. Press equals, and it gives me my answer of 0.214990848. And again, if I use the formula, I should get the exact same answer for that. Now, if I just go back and show you what list mode does, so that's giving me the exact value. So if I go away from that, so let's go to menu again. So select option 7. This time I'm going to go for BPD again, but this time I'm going to go for list. And now here what I've got is I've now got to enter values in. So here I can work out multiple values. So as you can see, I've got n equals 10. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to enter all possible numbers of n that I could have. And again, I'm not using random numbers, although you could easily do that. So I've got 1 to 10 written down in my x column. And again, the key thing to remember where a lot of people go wrong using this mode is remember to always start with 0. And obviously the numbers on this side where you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 can be very confusing. So here we're looking at the x column, not the column on the side. So from this, if I've entered the numbers in, and again, I don't have to use all 10 or 11 numbers. I could have just entered certain numbers. I don't have to do it in numerical order either. I could just simply go in from just 4, 5, 6 if that's what I'm wanting. And then press equals. And then all I then need to do is enter the parameter of the question. So here I've got 10(4) already programmed. I press equals, and as you can see, it's given to me all the probabilities of all of those individual answers. So here if I go down to 3, which is what I'm wanting, you can see it's giving me the answer of 0.2149, but using this mode it's only giving me the answer to 4 decimal places, whereas using the variable mode it's giving me a much a much more accurate answer where it's not been rounded. And again, this is going to be really good, and this gives you all the probabilities. So for example, if I add up all of those probabilities together, as you can see on the screen, let's move the cursor, all of those numbers should add up to 1, because I'm definitely going to get a number that's between 0 and 10. And there you go. And again, like I said, that gives you the exact values for it. So again, let's have a look. So let's move on to the next question. So let me move out from that. So this time we're working with x is less than 6. Now for this, what I'm actually the numbers I'm wanting is that x equals 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're the possible numbers that I want. So I could use the formula to work out each of those individual 6 probabilities, add them all together, and I've got my answer. Or what I could do is work with, and again I could use my BP mode, in which let's have a look, let's just do that. So enter that, BPD mode. I'm going to enter, so 10.4 is exactly what I'm wanting, which I've just realised I'm in the wrong mode. So we've got equals and BP mode. I want a list, and I've got all the numbers already pre-programmed on there. Enter the parameter, press equals. So what I would do is I'd write x equals 0 is going to give me a p of 0.006, and for probability of 1, x equals 0.0403 when x equals 2, p equals 0.1209. Again, the key thing is don't get confused with the numbers on the side. We're looking at the x values, not those numbers. And again, it's very simple mistakes that people can make. And obviously I'm going to continue that all the way down to the probability of x equals 5. So x equals 5 is 0.0206, and I would add up each of those values and I would get the answer from there. Now a quicker way or a smarter way of doing this is recognizing that what I'm wanting is that p equals x is less or equal to 5. That's basically what I'm wanting. I'm wanting numbers 5 or less is basically what this question is asking me. So what I could do is either work out each of those probabilities and work it out, or what I could do is use the commutative mode, which is BCD. I call it BCD because on the calculator I used to use it was just BCD, but I'm actually meaning binomial. So for this I'm going to use the variable mode, and basically what this is going to give me is entering the value of a certain number or less. So here my x, so using BCD, x is going to equal 5, n is going to equal 10, and p is going to equal 0.4 again. So entering those numbers in, so I've got 5, 10, 0.4, and it gives me my answer straight away. So I've got p equals 0.83376138824. Now if I was to go and use the variable mode, so let me just go back. So again I'm going to use BCD, but this time I'm going to go for list mode. So again I've entered all the numbers of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And again I could have certain values, it's entirely up to you. Press equals, and I enter my parameter, which is 10.4, and press equals, and it's giving me my values here. Now all this does is these numbers, the probabilities now in this column, will give me the values of x or less. So the commutative, just like with commutative frequency diagrams, this gives me that. So you would expect, what's the probability of getting in this particular case in 10 or less? Well, that's going to be guaranteed, and you'll find that the probabilities are automatically all the way going to build up to 1. So the probability of you getting 10 or less is guaranteed, so the probability is 1. So for this, what I could do is read off the actual value of where x is less or equal to 5, and as you can see it's giving me the exact same answer. If I actually hover over it, it's actually giving me the exact value, which is even better. I didn't actually realise that. So here I've got the same answer, and we go from here. So BCD gives you the cumulative values of such things. Now looking at question C, and again, so what values is this looking for? Well, this is looking for x equals 8, 9 and 10. So again I could easily work out each of those 3 individual probabilities. So let's go back and do that. So let's look at BPD, so option 4, and we're going for a list, let's say. So again I've entered my numbers of 1 to 10 in absolutely fine. List my parameters. So here for me to work out the individual probabilities, I've got that 8 is, so when x equals 8, p equals, and let's just scroll up, for 8, so that's going to be 0.010616832. For x equals 9, p is going to equal, and again just scroll down, gives me 1 point, or should I say not 1 point, let's do it in numerical value. Well, I could do it in standard form, it's entirely up to you. So I've got 0.001572864, and the probability of it being 10 is going to give me, if I scroll down on my calculator, it's going to give me 0.000104857 6. And again, I will simply add those probabilities up, and you can see I've shown full working out how you can do this, which is absolutely fine. Now another alternative to doing that method, you might say, oh, that's a lot of faff, is to be a bit smarter in terms of your notation. Now, as we said, when working with certain questions, obviously you're asked to work out a certain value, but when working with probabilities, particularly with exhaustive events, sometimes you can also, an alternative would be for you to work out what you don't want and taking away from 1. So here, the numbers I don't want are going to be values where x is less or equal to 6, and so I take away 1. So one thing I could do on my calculator then is get out of this, select that mode, I'm going to go to be commutative mode, so option 1. I'm just going to have a variable because I'm only wanting 1. As you can see, I've only got 1 value for me to find, so I'm only looking for this. And so I'll press 2 and I enter the values in. So x in this case is 6 and the rest is exactly the same, so press equals. So what I need to work out then is 1 minus 0.94523811184, and I do that on my calculator and I should get the answer to 4 decimal places. So if we round it up to there, we get 0.0548, and there is my final answer. So again, there's several ways in which you can actually work this out. It depends on how intuitive you are of working through such questions. And so looking at question D, so question D, I'm wanting the numbers 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So again, working with BPD, I can, again, going straight back to my calculator menu, option 7, BPD 4. Now for this, because I've want a list of 5 possible values, I'm going to go for a list. Now for this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete all those numbers and I'm just going to type in these ones I want. So I want 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. I press equals, enter my parameter in, which is absolutely fine, and then I can work it out from there. So here what I need to do is work out these. So I've got 0.2149 plus 0.2508 plus 0.2006 plus 0.1114 plus, and scroll down for the last one, 0.0424, in which I could just simply add those values up and I get the answer straight away. Now another alternative I could do to work this particular question out is again look at what I want to do. Now again, there is another video on how you can manipulate certain questions to work out what it is. So another way of getting the same answer would be the probability of x is less than or equal to 7, because that includes all the numbers from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'm going to minus that from x is less or equal to 2. So it's going to take away the numbers 0, 1 and 2. So what that will then leave me with is the numbers that I actually want, which is 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So from this, what I can then do is go back out of this, and again, you don't have to keep doing this, it's just another alternative. So again, option 7, I want cumulative values, so option 1, and I want variable because I'm only wanting 2 particular values. So here I'm going to go for, well actually I'll go for list. So here I'm going to delete all those numbers that are in there. So I'm wanting 7 and I'm wanting 2. I press equals, enter the parameter in, which is fine, and it's giving me those 2 values. So here what I need to work out then is 0.9877 minus 0.1672. Press equals and I'll get the same answer, and there is what I'm wanting. So again, you go back into your mode and you go from there, and this is where sometimes having 2 calculators comes in handy, where you can use one as a sort of way of finding out certain values and then another calculator to simply type it in. So looking at the next one here, so for E, and again it's always important to establish what numbers we're actually wanting. So here we're wanting x is between 5 and 9, inclusive of 9 but exclusive of 5, so I'm wanting where x is 6, 7, 8 and 9. So again, going back to the calculator and resetting it, or switching it off even, and going to menu, there we go, and select 7. So here I could go for the exact value, so I could go for PBD, and then I could have a list, and then entering the numbers I want. So I want 6, 7, 8 and 9, and press equals, and the parameters are exactly the same, press equals there, and all in my working out, all I've got to do is 0.1114 plus 0.0424 plus 0.0106 plus, and again I could, if it's working out, I could enter it as 1.5 times 10 to minus 3, or I could just write it out, so 0.0015, work that out, press equals, and I get the correct answer. And again, another alternative using the BCD mode would be recognizing that this is going to be equal to the probability of where x is less or equal to 9 minus the probability that x is less or equal to 5. So this includes the numbers of 0 to 9, and this will include the numbers of 0 to 5, leaving me with the numbers of 6 to 9. And that's how the type of manipulation that you want to work with. So if I just get rid of some of this working out, and go through this on the calculator. So again, get out of this mode, select option 7, and again I want BCD. And again I could use list or I could use variable, depends on what we're going for. So I'll go for list this time because I've got to work out two numbers. So here I'm going to go for, let's get rid of all these. So I want 9 and I want 5, and press equals, press the parameter, and so it's giving me my two cumulative values, and it's giving me the values of 0.998 with an extra 9 which I've missed off, take away 0.8337, and that should give me the final answer for me to then work it out and go from there. And like I said, what would have been helpful is if you could actually do some calculator with this on screen, but unfortunately you can't. And this is one of the advantages of having two calculators when you're working through it. So again, it's entirely up to you, but as long as you've written down these two numbers, it's not really difficult for you to go to your menu, press option 1, and you can then work it out. So 0.9998 minus 0.8337 equals, and you've got your answer there to 4 decimal places. Now again, word of warning is just be mindful of your rounding. Always have a look at what questions, if they're specified in a textbook or in an exam, how they want the answer written. Do they want it to 5 decimal places? Do they want it to 3 significant figures, etc.? If there's no mention at all, then usually rule of thumb, in particular exams or AQA exams, it's usually 3 significant figures. But in working out, I would always go 2 numbers extra than how you're going to write your answer to. So if you're going to write your answer to 3 dp, then in your working, always write numbers to 5 dp, just so you're not going to lose any marks in terms of error. Now, typically speaking, in exams, mark schemes, they usually do give you, let's say, a range of possible answers for you to go in, depending on how accurate you are in your working out. So there isn't that much impetus on it, but you want to try and be as accurate as possible. So always go that little bit extra, particularly when you're working out, and then round up your final answer. In an ideal world, you would use your exact values, but who's got the time to write down 9-digit numbers every time they're writing a number down? Now, if you're working with the FX CG50 Casio calculator, which is the graphic calculator, it's slightly different in terms of how you access the menus and things you have to do, which is what I'm going to go through now. So to access your statistic mode, what you need to do is click on menu screen. You want to go option 2, which is statistics, and you'll get your table or your list of tables. Now, with regards to this, if you've got any numbers in your list that you're wanting to delete, then all you need to do is press F6 and until you get to delete all, and press F4, and it'll ask you whether you want to confirm. Yes, we do. And you want to make sure you got all numbers deleted from there. Obviously it's not essential, but when it comes to the settings, it's just something to bear in mind. Now, from this, if you are working with lists, like we've discussed earlier with the FX991 calculator, then what I strongly recommend that you do is enter your numbers in. So for example, working with the same parameter of x is binomially distributed with n of 10 and 0.4, and I want to work with a list, then what I would do is on my calculator, I would start by entering the numbers in on the calculator of the values that I want in list 1. Try not to enter it in other lists. When you get a bit of practice, you'll understand what I'm talking about, but in the meantime, like I said, just try and keep things in list 1 and keep it consistent. Now, if you're not using a list, it's not a problem. It's not essential to what we're doing, but if you are, then this is the time to enter it in. Now, once you've done that, what you then want to do is go across and you want to select distribution. So if you press F5 till you see the word Dist, and because we're working with binomial, so we're selecting binomial, and then here you've got the choices of BPD or BCD, which is what we kind of discussed in the previous part of the video when we looked at the FX991EX calculator. Now, when we are entering those two modes, what you'll come up is with these two screens. So if we just look at the BPD mode, bit of a tongue twister, you'll come up with this. Now, your data is basically, you've got a choice. Now, for your data, what you can do is you can choose either a list or variable. Now, variable, as we discussed, only gives you certain values. So you're only going to work with certain values of X that you will type in. And a list is basically numbers from the table. Previously. Now, if you've entered list, you will get another option of list 1, and list is basically where are your numbers. So where are your numbers? Now, generally speaking, if I just enter out of this, which hopefully I can do, my numbers that I've entered are in list 1, so that's where you type in. And if you're wanting to enter those values in, so if I just go back to that mode, so for example, if I scroll down, it'll give me the option of entering what column are my numbers. So again, you could have multiple columns and multiple lists, etc., but I'll keep it simple. And like I said, here if I wanted variable, that disappears in terms of that. Now, once you've selected with variable, so if I have selected variable, which as you can see you've got on the screen, then X is your X value, num trial is basically your N value, and P is the probability of a success, just like normal. And once I've entered those parameters in, so for example, if I entered, let's say I want to work out where X is binomially distributed with 10, 0, 4, just like before, and I want to work out X equals 7, then again what I would do is with variable, enter the values in. So I've got X equals 7, number of trials is 10, and my probability is 0.4. I press equals, and it gives me my probability straight away. Now again, if I was to work with a table, so let's go back and let's change that to a list. So again, I wanted my list, etc. I press execute, and you can see how it's given me all those individual probabilities with each of those. And you can see that I've got all 11. Now the only problem with this, as you can see, is that it doesn't actually show me the value of X, which I can see, which is a bit of a flaw on this, because you can get confused. So for example, you might think that the probability you can see there is 0.214999 for when X is 4. Well, actually it's for when X is 3, because the numbers don't include 0. So this, although it says 1, that's 0, that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, that's 5, that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so there is a bit of a flaw. Now it might just be with this model that I've got on the screen. Yours might be slightly different, but again, that's just something to look out for when we're dealing with this. So going from that, we can then look at variables. So let's have a look at some other questions. So let's have a look at when we're going into BCD mode. So binomial BCD mode. So here, and again I've got my options of what I could have. Now in terms of this, I would strongly recommend you don't faff about with the lists. Always go for variable when you're in this mode. Now for this, the good thing about regards to this is it gives us our upper and lower values. So when we're dealing with BCD, always go for, so with that, for data, always select variable. Now once you've got that, what we then want to do is working with certain values. So the lower is basically your smallest value of x, smallest value of x wanted, and your upper is going to be your largest value of x wanted, and then you've got num trial, which is n, and your p, which is the probability of a success. So, and it's always just a case of just messing around. Obviously textbook questions are really good for this because you can kind of check to see how your calculator works and get an understanding of what it is you actually need to do. So for example, let's have a look at how I'd enter certain questions with regards to this. So using BCD, if I wanted to work out questions asking me, let's first of all set the parameter of 10, 0.4. So let's say I wanted to work out where x is inclusive of these numbers. So here my lower would be 1, because would be 2 rather. My upper would be 5 because I want that number, okay, and it's just a case of just working through it. And then from this, what we can then do is enter n, which is 10, p, which is 0.4, and pressing equals. So here let's go for lower is 2, our upper is 5, and the rest is absolutely fine. So it gives us a probability of 0.787, 40398 to more levels of accuracy. So it's 0.7874 to 4dp. Now if I was to change this question up, so let's just get rid of this first and just explain a little bit more into detail what we're looking for. So let's say I wanted where the probability of looking at 4x and let's say 9. So in other words, what I'm wanting is I'm wanting the numbers of 5, 6, 7 and 8. So 5 would be my lower value, 8 would be my upper value, and then I would simply enter that into my calculator and I'd get the answers from there. And like I said, the key thing you want to focus on is make sure that that there says variable, and you can follow the same things. Now, like I said, working with your calculators, as I said, with binomial distribution, there are so many different ways in which you can answer a question, and I strongly recommend that you practice using your calculator with the correct answers in front of you. So whether it be from a question from a textbook or questions you've previously tried using the formula, have a go at those and get an understanding of how to use your calculator correctly, and also which calculator you've got, and stick to that calculator as well. Obviously, going into exams, my personal belief is you take 2 calculators in, so either you take the FX991EX calculator and a scientific calculator, or the graphic calculator with a scientific calculator. That's entirely up to you, but having 2 calculators at hand is obviously going to save you a bit of time, and it allows you to multitask a little bit quicker. That's all. It makes you a little bit efficient. It's not essential, but I would recommend it.